We have somebody hanging out with us, not too far. Sounds like Austin, he, him in Texas, has some questions about the terms atheist and agnostic. How are you, Austin?
Hey, how's it going?
No, pretty good, pretty good. You're here with Secular Rarity and student Dr. Ben. What would you like to chat with us today about?
Yes, sir. So I was just wanting to discuss. So I feel that there is, obviously there's agnostic and atheist. I am agnostic, and I believe that the attitude that is put forth from atheists seems. So obviously we know that atheism doesn't have a claim to prove, and neither does agnostic because the claim is to be proven by the person that claims that God exists. But I believe that the attitude that they put forward would insinuate that they believe without a reasonable doubt that there is no God, and therefore I also believe that in that way of speaking, I don't think that atheism is the correct term to use. I think it should be agnostic because we, as people who don't think that there is significant evidence or sufficient evidence for God, should use agnostic because agnostic just simply means that we don't know, that there is no proof that we don't know.
So I want to ask. I'm sure that you've probably heard us use the term agnostic atheist. Do you have? Do you think that we need to stick with one term, or could we use these terms in combination and maybe get more of a nuanced definition there?
Well, I do believe that the use of both words is appropriate for defining someone's particular attitude. Like, for instance, there is Baptist, which so if someone tells you that they're that they're Baptist, then oh, okay, so you're not a lax Christian. You're more of a more conservative kind of Christian. Whereas it's kind of the same thing with atheism and agnosticism.
That kind of depends, doesn't it, Austin? Like, have you met people that have taken a label before where ultimately when you press them on what that label means for them personally in their life, that actually they give you a little bit more of a nuanced and maybe kind of, gray area response to it where like, hey, yeah, I guess technically, I'm a Baptist. I take that label, but I don't exactly practice these things, which are like, traditionally considered part of Baptists, I think where Ben was going earlier was a really good thought, which is we don't have to be so exclusionary on this. We don't have to be so hardcore. It's okay that we have a little bit of give and take because if we're being honest, all the Christians do, right? All the Muslims, all the Hindus. Like I've talked to so many Hindus who have said to me, "Oh, you don't have to believe in Brahman to be a Hindu." And I'm like, "What? What?" They go, "Yeah, you don't have to worry about any of these stuff. You don't have to sacrifice this. You don't have to care about sacred cows. You don't have to give crap about any of that." Because these labels oftentimes are just a good starting point, right? As opposed to like telling us everything about ourselves. So
don't you believe that that's part of the problem? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, so I think there's a little bit of an issue here with the comparison if we're going from comparing the term atheist to comparing the term Baptist. So I think we're entering two different tiers of generality. So if we take the general term Christian, right, that includes the Baptists, but it might also include the evangelicals, includes the Anglicans, includes the Catholics. Some people consider the Mormons to fit in this as well. So you have this broad category with these subsets of that category. And I think comparing atheist to Baptist is comparing a broad general term to the specific subsect. And I think if we more liken atheism to Christian in that this is the broad category, and then underneath atheism, we have agnostic atheism and Gnostic atheism and these other subsets. But I think maybe we're having a little bit of miscommunication when we compare the broader category to a smaller category.
Yeah, and just to jump off of that and kind of go back to what you were asking a second ago, Austin, about whether or not that kind of not completely nailed down terminology that some people use incorrectly, some people use this way, blah blah, is that part of the problem? I would say sure, but I would put it more in the vein of where Ben was just laying it out, where it's a miscommunication between two people that if we're actively trying to learn from each other, well, then we're gonna actively be listening. We're gonna be charitable when it comes to the things that people tell us. And I think what would be a better route for us all is, instead of us coming to these conversations with our preconceived notions, right? Hey, maybe we know every single word in the dictionary and all the etymology and everything, but we should remember that we're communicating with other people. And the whole point is trying to figure out, what's your life like? What's your understanding of this? Let me give you my kind of perspective on it. And if that's the way we're approaching these conversations, then if somebody comes up to me and says, hey, I'm a Baptist, well, I'm not going to ascribe anything else to them until they tell me. When somebody comes up to me and says, hey, I'm an atheist, I'm not going to ascribe anything to them until they tell me. I'll say, hey, do you mean that you don't think gods are real? And they'll say, no, 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 I just don't believe, I just don't have any, belief in a deity. It's like, oh, okay, we can work with that and we can move on and continue the conversation. But we've been chatting a bunch here, Austin. We always want your thoughts, man. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, I know. I see where you're going with that, and it's not that I disagree, because I do agree, but at the same point, I just so you did ask me earlier. You asked me, well, do I think that there should be a defined and the answer, I didn't really answer you honestly. And yes, I do believe there should be a defined difference between atheism and agnosticism. Simply, if anything, in the dictionary. Like, for instance, the definition off of the dictionary for atheism and agnosticism is basically the same thing. It's if I was to use an analogy, the definition for atheism is I file paperwork, whereas the definition for being agnostic is I file names and phone numbers for particular companies or people based off of.
Do you mind if I kind of jump in, Austin? I know I'm kind of cutting you off a little bit, but do you mind? Because I think what you just brought up is a totally worthwhile thing, in the sense of we try to go to some reputable source that is seemingly gonna kind of help us get clarity on this thing that's a little bit murky right now. And at the end of the day, it kind of seems like maybe it didn't really help as much as we want, right? But the way that dictionaries work more often than not is when enough people that speak this language start using a word a certain way, whether it's correct or not for the meaning of the word as it was originally started to be used, right? It doesn't matter. And at this point in time, in all of the major English dictionaries, there is a section on the word literally where it says this word can also mean metaphorically or figuratively, right? A literal contradiction. And I did use that word correctly there, but I could literally use the word every single sentence and like literally have all these literal things. And I'm still using the word correctly because there is a nuance between it. There is a little bit of a different understanding, just because apparently that's the way we've used it. And for a very long time, people have used the terms agnostic and atheist completely interchangeably with no distinction between them. And I disagree with that. But if I find out that that's what the person that I'm communicating with, if I find out that's the way that they understand those words, well, I'm going to accept that and try and continue the conversation. And maybe at some point, say, hey, I think these might be just a little bit, more nuanced. Maybe they might have a little bit more specificity that would be helpful for you to understand things. But at the end of the day, if somebody comes up to me and says, when they say agnostic, they mean you can't possibly know there's a God. When they say atheist, they mean I just don't have a belief in any deity, nothing more specific. Cool. And that's easy for me in that sense of just trying to be charitable with them and let them tell me how they're using that term. Because again, I just think that's something valuable for all of us to do. But I mean, at the end of the day, you say you take the agnostic, that label of the I don't know, right? Is that what you said?
Right.
Do you think
I don't have sufficient evidence to believe.
Sure. Do you think that also would mean that you would fall into the category of you currently do not have a belief in a deity of any kind?
Correct.
I would say that that is what the vast majority of people would call the softer or weaker form of atheism. It doesn't have anything to do with the strength of the argument. It just literally has to do with how hard of a stance you take on it. So I take the stance that every single God that has ever been proposed to me, I actively make the claim does not exist. But there are conceptions of God that I haven't heard of. And on those, while I may not know, I also still don't believe in them currently. And if we use that softer definition, well, then atheism is just kind of this, pretty broad category, like Ben was talking about earlier, the difference between like Baptist and Christian. Baptist is a little bit more specific.
Kind of the same thing too. Like even if we designate agnosticism as a separate label, we run into the same issue, because two people could say that they're agnostic and it still doesn't tell me anything about what they're agnostic about, or their levels of certainty for certain claims. As you could say you're agnostic, but say, yeah, I lean more towards believing in a God than not, but I still don't know for sure. Like, they still probably be able to call themselves agnostic. So I think either way, no matter what label you take on, you're going to have to work further into what specifically they mean. So, and I support the use of labels in whatever way you personally want to use them, as long as you can communicate your thoughts. Because at the end of the day, that's all that labels are really good for, is explaining your point of view to somebody else. So I wouldn't get on somebody else's case about it, but at least that's kind of the way I would see the conversation still needing to go.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so my question is, and I want to clarify, I don't know which one of you said it, but so whenever you were saying that you would, I don't remember your exact words, because you kind of went over a lot there for a second, but basically, so what you're saying is that, because the reason I harp on it so much about differentiating between, agnostics, being agnostic and being atheist, is that, in times when you do have a conversation with an evangelical or a Baptist or whatever, which, by the way, I use Baptist, but I just couldn't think of the word evangelical for some reason. I guess under pressure, I just couldn't think of the word. But getting back to my point, I wanted a way to basically streamline the conversation so that they could be conveyed as to what stance I took. But what you're saying is that it would be better to communicate in a way that they would understand. Like, for instance, every Christian or theist knows what an atheist is. So, or at least has a good idea. They may have some misconceptions about it. But in other words, I just want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly. So you're saying that it would be best if, for instance, I had a conversation with a theist and I said, oh, I'm atheist. And then later in the conversation, I said, well, technically my label would be agnostic because I don't know for sure. And I'm take more of a softer stance on it. So I wouldn't be technically an atheist. I'd be agnostic. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think it depends on the situation and it depends on the person you're talking to, because I think either way, you're going to have to elaborate on what you mean by agnostic or what you mean by atheist. Right. And I would hope that you're having that depth of conversation with them as well. But the language I would use to describe myself largely depends on the other person and where they're trying to go with the conversation. But either way, I would say I am an atheist and this is what I take the position of. And I think that if you're having an honest conversation, then they should be able to listen to what you say your stance is and be able to follow you there. So I think we agree more than we disagree. We just have slightly different approaches for how we're engaging with people. And I think that's totally fine. And people engage differently. So,
and I would just say, sure. I don't know that there is either of those methods or another method that is inherently better. I think we can all probably think of, ways to make the conversation worse, right? But we're going for the how to make it better. And I think you're gonna find that there are some people that have a shorthand for certain concepts because it makes it easier for them to get through the grocery store checkout line. I don't need to tell you every little thing about my childhood and to try to get you to understand and let me pay for my groceries and go home. But sometimes, sometimes it is super important to take an extra 5 to 10 minutes to just explain a definition of a word so that everybody's on the same page. Because again, exactly like what Ben was saying, If this is a charitable conversation between people that are, you know, actually intended on learning the other side and getting a different perspective, and making some kind of progress, then you don't have to fight as hard. I've found that's not a blanket. Every single conversation is going to be like that, you know. But more often than not, I find when we are being charitable with our interlocutor, and we are letting them kind of, you know, tell us their thoughts and their labels and stuff, it does really help us out. But Austin, we really appreciate you hanging out with us today. I hope we got a little bit of that kind of worked out and maybe a little bit easier for you. But also, hey, try the things and give us a call back and let us know how it went. Like maybe you do kind of go through an explanation next time you're having this conversation and it just goes horribly off the rails, right? Or maybe you make a brand new friend. So either way, you can always give us a call here.